Yeah, welcome everybody to, I've titled this webinar several things, several different names, but the main part is the nature paradigm and kind of, trying to take and move away from the taker mentality that we all have, and move into being caretakers, where we caretake ourselves and deal with our own struggles, and we have our fellow caretakers to help us with that, and then we can, as one human family, focus on some of the destruction that we've caused to spaceship Earth. And otherwise, I think our time here may be limited. And as I jokingly say, Mother Earth would be like, enough of you humans. I'm going to flick you off and maybe give the bird people a chance to give it a go and see if they can get it right. So yeah, so the title of this is, the nature paradigm, what I'm calling the nature paradigm. And what I'm literally trying to do with my work is take this, we as Homo sapiens have been around, depending on who you talk to, anywhere from, a couple 100,000 years. For most of that, we lived in small groups in nature. We, instead of, going to a job and selling our time to somebody, so they can chase their dreams for this imaginary currency, which we then used to pay for food, clothing, and shelter. Back in the hunter-gatherer days, we did those things by going out into the woods and gathering raw materials and making any tool we may need. And, a lot of people speak about freedom. We live in a free country, when none of us are free. We're shackled to the gas station, the grocery store, the internet, all this stuff. As somebody who possesses the skills to walk out into the woods and live just fine, I can tell you that is true freedom. And in order for other people to be able to experience that, there needs to be some nature left. And in just, then agriculture comes along and property rights, and before you know it, the population explodes. And in such an infinitesimal span of time, we have wrought an incredible amount of destruction upon the planet. You'd think after a couple of millennia, we would learn to do away with things like violence and racism and hate of any kind. Instead, we are just, we are pitted against each other by forces that profit from that. And then, of course, we need things, right? We need our protein drink cups and our computers. So we got to have people to go put all those things together, and you gotta have a new model every year. They can't make anything that's quality, and we've just totally perverted our existence, as Homo sapiens. And my aim is to do away with that and help people to realize that we're one human family and we're all facing the same fate unless we do something about it. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why I think our humanity is a rudderless boat is because most people have lost that connection to nature, and they're okay with the wholesale destruction of it as long as they can get their iPhone 15X and their toilet paper and all the other things they need. So, so here's where we get multimedia. Let's see if this works. There's a few videos I put in here for those of you who might not be too familiar with, my work. So let's see if this works. All right, come on.
Amen, brother. So far,
Yeah. All right.
Doesn't work. I just see you sitting in a chair with a nice green background.
Really? The video's not playing?
I don't see nothing, but you got a shirt with a white circle on it.
The video is playing. You just got to work on a different screen there. Play around with scrolling to the right and the left and up and down and see if you can find a different screen.
Okay, thank you.
So that was a video that was put together by a friend of mine. Did most of you see that?
Yeah, I saw it.
I saw it.
Yes. Yeah. If I'll give out my YouTube channel and all that stuff later. You can see any of the videos on there. But something that always happens with slideshows with me and these sort of presentations, and I almost did this one without any slides, is I inevitably talk about things, and then get to a slide and be like, oh, I already talked about all that stuff. But once again, just a little bit about me. Mainly, I try to be a student of life. A capital T tracker. And what do I mean by that? A capital T tracker, the nearest pop culture reference I can think of is Sherlock Holmes. When I walk in the woods, when I walk through a parking lot, I am constantly tracking. And, I can't walk by a car without looking inside and trying to decide, what the person does for a job, how old they may be. Just asking questions about it. I'm constantly just amazed by all the mysteries there are and all the threads there are to follow. And I just, our lifespans, we're up to about 80 years now. That's a blink of an eye in nature time. And I want to get the most I can out of every single day of my life. I don't want to be one of the mindless gray masses that just, wake up, make coffee, go to work, drive home from work, watch Netflix, eat dinner, go to bed, rinse, lather, repeat. Then by the time you hit about 60, you realize that, holy crap, my whole life has gone by and I haven't done anything. I haven't really experienced anything. And one of the saddest stories ever is I had a friend whose grandfather retired at 74 years old and he sold his company for $120 million. And, he was still for 72, he was like more like 50, took good care of himself. He was retired for 2 weeks before he went and got a job at Walmart as a greeter, because he had spent his whole life building this company and never developed any sort of interest in anything and didn't know what to do with his time. And all of a sudden, within a week, found himself depressed. And I hate to see that. I hate to see, the wholesale slaughter of, our children being forced into school that, seeks to turn them into subservient robots that will keep the wheels of the machine going. I want to wake people up. And that's one of the reasons photography plays so heavily into what I do, is because through my images, I'll be at a farmer's market, and um, uh, people will pick up a photo um, off my display table, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, did you take this in the Amazon rainforest?" And I say, "No, I actually took that photo probably, less than a mile from here." And then they're like, "There's things that are this beautiful around here." And I'm like, "Yeah, all you have to do is look." And even if that person doesn't buy a photo from me, never takes a class from me, I at least got them to start to question, what, um, uh, start to ask that question, the sacred question, as we call it. What's happening? What's happening here? What is this teaching me? So yeah, and by doing so, I'm slightly plugging them back into nature. Obviously, I'm a nature educator, and I try to speak for those whose voices that most people cannot hear. I'd like to think that if you're here, you are definitely more aware than the average bear. So I'm preaching to the choir a bit. But, I've been doing this for 22 years, and I have letters and emails of people who were just aimless wanderers, depressed, suicidal. And then they came and took a class, and all of a sudden the sparkle came back in their eyes, and they realized that there's so much beauty and wonder out there and how connected it all is. And, that's my goal. When I teach somebody the bow drill and they get their first bow drill fire, watching the look on their face when they blow that tinder bundle into flames, that's what keeps me chugging along. Oh, pop that again. And here's one more video. This one might take a second to load. Let's see here. I think I have to play. There we go. So this is just some of the things and some of the ways that I view nature. I'm never satisfied with just observing. I want to get in that creek. I want to crawl around those rocks. All right. Oh, let's admit Pam. So yeah, so I spend my days. I spend my days. Well, I used to spend my days when I wasn't teaching out with my cameras, trying to capture the world as I see it. To show people things from a different angle, a different point of view, to show them that areas that they've been to 100 times uh, can be unique every time you enter them. One of the saddest things ever was when I first moved here to Oregon. My landlord was 74 years old now, and he had never eaten a salmon berry before, and his whole property is covered in them. And I was like, here, we collected a bunch and brought them over to him, and he's like, you can eat those? And I'm like, yeah, try them. And he started weeping as he's eating them because he realized that uh, you know, he spent his whole life, and didn't try them. And, that's the type of things I want to prevent. I want people to really experience experiences, to not think a feeling, but actually feel it. I want to dispel some of the fear around nature. That's why I hate these TV shows out there that are survival based. I've turned hundreds of them down. They actually, when Bear Grylls got fired from Discovery Channel because one of my students he had hired to be a survival consultant for the region he was in, ratted him out for going back to 5-star hotels at night, and then coming back, and they would recreate like the dirt on his face. And the production, this Discovery called me, and they offered me a lot of money, many figures. And I laughed at them and hung up, just like I have every other producer or production company, because they always want to continue the myth of, man versus wild, naked and afraid. One thing I can tell you from my years of experience is that if you try to fight nature, you will get your butt kicked every single time. But if you surrender to nature, if you listen to nature, if you pay attention to what's going on around you, you can provide yourself with all of our needs. But back to this nature paradigm I'm talking about. So, the goal is to create literally an army of caretakers. And but caretaking means many different things to many different people. But to me, a caretaker is somebody that every time they leave a place, a space, or a person, that area is better than when they got there. And in order to really truly be capital C caretakers, the first thing we have to do is we have to heal ourselves. We have to deal with the traumas that we have, no matter, how wonderful of an upbringing we had. We all have traumas, and we can heal those through nature, through simply just by sitting in nature and contemplating it, contemplating those problems. communicating with other people who have a heightened level of awareness. And then once we do that work, and trust me, as somebody who's still doing that work, I've recently, some of I've been out here for 6 years teaching, and was working with an organization, and some things were supposed to pan out one way and they didn't. And I literally about a month away from being houseless myself because of this, this business deal. But I am not going to let that slow me down. For a while, when that first happened to me, I was pissed off about it. And, I was always pointing fingers, I got screwed over, blah, 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 when it was in the past and there was nothing I could do about it. And what is me, ranting about it, what good is that going to do? That's just taking my energy from healing myself and moving forward, learning from the experience. It's taking energy from that. And instead, you just repeat the cycle. We repeat the cycle. And, I also want people to stop fearing change itself. So many people get trapped in horrible, abusive relationships because the fear of change is just so overwhelming to them that, not knowing what's going to happen or where they're going to go is better than being abused. And so many people hold themselves back, just by stepping out of their fear. That's why, one thing I was going to put in here, but I didn't for copyright's sake. If you've ever read the Dune books, there's something I highly recommend you look up, and it is called The Litany Against Fear. And that became my mantra. We all have fears. We all have things that hold us back. And, what they say about fear, false expectations appearing real. My fear is money. I'm terrified of money. Terrified of not having enough of it. I've been terrified of having too much of it in the past. Yeah. Another key to becoming more aware is leading a life of wide angle vision. And those of you who are tracker school related know about wide angle vision. If you can hold your hands out at your side like this and point your fingers forward and wiggle them, if you can see them wiggle, you are in wide angle vision. There's a problem though. See, we are meant to spend about 99.5% of our life in that state of wide angle vision, where, as a photographer, it's like taking a photo with a wide angle lens. Problem is, nowadays, most people spend their time in tunnel vision, looking at the phone, right? Looking at the computer. They're literally looking down a tunnel at whatever's in front of them, and blocking everything else out, or their brain will just randomly fill in, things based on colors and shadows. So, that wide angle vision is one of the most powerful tools that I teach, because by doing things like moving through life in wide angle vision, or moving through the forest in wide angle vision, and just slowing down a little bit, we can move from the beta brainwave state into the alpha brainwave state. And in that state, we have heightened ability of healing, heightened abilities to learn and retain information. We can, we're just more aware people, also called being in the zone. And so I encourage you, even if you have to program something in your phone that just says WAV, to break that cycle of always being in tunnel vision. And when you do that, all of a sudden this world opens up to you where you see so much more. And that's also true for your internal, your mind. Think of it this way, wide angle vision, wide angle minded. Tunnel vision, tunnel minded. Every morning I wake up and I make the choice to, as Stalking Wolf would say, forget you have a past. Every morning I wake up and I empty my cup. And I try to leave my house realizing that everyone and everything I come into contact with has the ability to teach me something. Most people don't think that way at all. They just, they go about their day. They do their things. And there's some people are so entrenched in their beliefs that, I heard a funny thing recently. How dare you try and change my mind by presenting the facts? Yeah. Another crucial part of awareness is movement and how we move through the world. We move at an incredible rate, right? We have these metal boxes we can get in that are capable of, moving way faster than we can on our own. We got to get up. We got to be at an appointment. We got to be at work. We got to be at school. We're always rushing. And then people go into the woods to seek, solace, but they take that same fast-paced form of movement with them into the woods. And they wonder why they don't see any animals. It's because you're moving too fast. You're making too much noise. Because you're moving too fast, your subconscious mind is protecting your body by forcing your eyes to a 45-degree angle to the ground to make sure there's no obstacles or things that are going to injure you should you step on them. And you literally miss the whole rest of the world around you. So when you learn movement, and this is a shameless plug for my my stealth and movement webinar that I do. When you learn how to move a little differently, and sorry, there's a spider on my glasses. When you learn how to move a little bit differently, not only is it much easier on your body, you are no longer an alien invader when you enter the woods. You're moving with the ebb and flow of what's going on around you. You're looking, you're listening, you're feeling, everything. And eventually you reach a point where you just know that, where the nearest deer is, or where the nearest owl is. You get, as you plug in, to the nature net connection, reset your router, and plug into the nature net, all of a sudden, this whole world comes alive that we've been around for decades in some places, and people see it for the first time. Number 5 on the list, what is the rut? The rut is what I mentioned before: the wake up, brush your teeth, drink your coffee, drive the same way to work, drive the same way home from work, watch TV, eat dinner, go to bed, and repeat the same pattern over and over and over again. And as we keep doing that pattern, what started off as a flat blank canvas, small rut forms, which gets deeper and deeper and deeper as we age, until it gets so high, the sides of the rut get so high we can't see outside. And then, you know, the only difference between the rut and a grave is the depth of the hole. So the best way to break the rut is do things, you know, it can be as simple as driving a different route to work. It can be, you know, making changes, doing things differently. Don't get stuck in those patterns, because when we get stuck in patterns, we miss so much. And so much of being a caretaker is having the awareness to pay attention to what's going on around you, and knowing how you can best help. And when we make these things a priority, that's when the magic happens. So I'm gonna look at my. So when we make, and you know, as I said, was finishing up with, you know, when we make these things a priority, when we make it a priority to work on, you know, trying to always remember to be in wide angle vision, to not just walk around life with our head looking directly in front, but varying our vision and looking around, up, down, under. You know, that it's, people ask me all the time how I get such amazing photographs. And I say, well, you know, I'll give you T3's patented 3-step system to becoming a good photographer. 1, always have a camera with you. I'm not fooling you that, like, and I'm going up to Alaska at the end of third week of August to teach a 7-day private tracking class. And 90% of what I bring will be camera equipment, and I'll pretty much wear what I'm going to wear the whole time I'm there. But yeah, you know, always have your camera with you, and look around, you know, get down low, you know, look behind, in and around things, you know, follow animal trails. You know, there's so much magic around us. Oh, there's my timer. There's so much magic all around us all the time. And, you know, this is the reference I use often, but, you know, I'll go to the grocery store, I'll get out of my car, and I'll be, of course, in wide angle vision looking around, and I'll catch a movement, and I'll turn, and I'll see a beautiful red-tailed hawk do a swoop off a thermal right through the sunset, and just see those, you know, the variation in color of its underbelly. And I'm just sitting there almost in tears. And then I look around the parking lot, and not a single other person noticed, you know, and it just breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart. I want to, you know, and this my main reason for this, you know, doing this webinar and all the work I do is to teach people to lead their ideal lives, you know, to be what they want to be. So a lot of people think that nature is chaos, right? We have a we used to have at my previous employer before I got kind of you know, separated from them. There was a staff shirt the first year I started working there 6 years ago, And, it had the logo on the front, and on the back it said, nature doesn't give a F. I'm not going to say the word, but yeah. And really, nature doesn't, nature is nature, and everything is nature. Even all of this fancy electronic crap that I've got laid out that you can't see. It's not like, we magically, asked a replicator on our Starship to make it for us. It was all made from materials that were, taken from the earth. But, and I think that's another reason that leads to such fear of nature, is they think it's this chaotic place. Here where I live in Oregon, we have the highest populations of mountain lions in the lower 48 states, I believe. We had my second year living here was the first ever account of a human being killed by a mountain lion. It happened less than a mile from my house. I actually got the mountain lion on my trail camera that was 20 yards from my front door the night before it happened at about 3 a.m. And what had happened is she had fallen and broken her leg and was probably thrashing around on the ground. And, the mountain lion bought a free meal. But, I ask people, at my survival basic classes, what are you afraid of in nature? And around here, it's always mountain lion. And I say, listen, I find mountain lion tracks every day. I find other mountain lion sign every day. I've only ever seen one mountain lion in the wild, and it was in Florida, of all places, where they're technically called panthers. At the time, there was supposedly only 27 of them in the state. And I was wild boar hunting with a guy, and it was a hot afternoon. And he said, we need to sit down for a little while and let it cool off before the pigs start moving around. This is after he sent me up over a berm, knowing that there was a 14-foot gator in the pond. That nearly got me while he's laughing. So we're sitting in this thicket of oak and palm, and it's in this like 20,000 acre cattle range pasture. And then all of a sudden, once again, out of wide angle vision, I see some movement, and the next island of palm and oak was about 75 yards away. And out of this thicket steps this beautiful female mountain lion. And she was probably, 7 feet from, tip of the nose to the tip of the tail, maybe a little shorter. And I just got to watch her beautifully just walk for 200 yards across the field. And I just sat there in amazement. But yet here in Oregon, where I find their sign daily, I have yet to see one. Seen lots of bobcats, lots of elk, but and I tell those same people, every time you go into the woods, there's a good chance that you are within a very short distance of a mountain lion. That mountain lion doesn't want to eat you. Think about what you smell like to that mountain lion. They want to eat deer. And what they find is a lot of the mountain lions that attack people aren't actually wild mountain lions. They were somebody's pet that they released into the wild. And it just didn't know how to be a mountain lion, so it attacked somebody. So the next line there, when you learn to truly see, not just look, but truly see, the chaos evaporates and you realize that there is no chaos. You realize that everything is connected. You learn that there is a mycelial network that connects every single tree in this old growth forest next to me. And that trees pass nutrients to each other through this mycelial network, even species to species. And a large tree will actually sacrifice themselves and give out all of their energy to the trees around them. I mean, think about that. It just blows my mind. I recently listened to a podcast about quantum computing, which is the next thing, which is basically an atom level thick sheets of computer processors. And the guy who originally came up with the idea for quantum computing derived it from nature and how nature works and how, every being out there has a role that it fulfills. And I find it funny that we, with our fancy thumbs and our cool toys, we seem to be the only animal that has to pose questions like, what is the meaning of life? As you'll see here in a second, everything out there is connected, and everything out there in nature just pretty much automatically fulfills its purpose. And the more time you spend in nature, the more the pattern will reveal itself. And you'll realize that things are far crazier than you thought they were. So let's take a look at these images here. So we've got our Milky Way galaxy, or at least the best rendering I could find on the free photo website, and 3 photographs I've taken. Do you notice the pattern? And it all ties in with the Fibonacci sequence and sacred geometry. But that pattern, isn't random. When you look at it, especially if you look at that, the flower photo, like a big image of it on my computer, it's amazing, how precise the pattern is, or the sword ferns unfurling, and to me, that can't be random. I'm not saying that God and his flowing robes and white beard did it, but that's not, it's there's too much. Too much. Let's look at some other patterns. We've got our vascular system in the center. We've got a river delta under that. We've got an old rotten log. And then we've got a leaf and its capillaries. Is it random that all of these things that are completely different from the micro to the macro follow this pattern? I think not. As I said, the more time we sit in nature, the more patterns we see. We see patterns in spider webs. Spiders are some of the most fascinating creatures. Here in Oregon, we have crab spiders, and they can actually camouflage themselves to match whatever flower they happen to be on. which is amazing. But yeah, there's patterns in everything. Bird migrations, right? So I know I tend to be like, instead of it being, June 10th, it is a, you know, 3/4 past summer, or it's like the spring 45, we're almost to summer. But I start, noticing the signs of spring with I start noticing when spring's coming, when the snowdrops first appear, that's one of my first indicators. And then I notice the oso berries, they start to, the first to put their leaves out. Oh, why is my computer not charging? Hold on 1 second, man. No reason. There we go. Sorry about that. But yeah, all these things are patterns, weather patterns. The pattern of a current flowing down a river, and how those patterns shape that river, and how that valley the river runs through was made by the river, or maybe it was made by a glacier. It's one of the cool things about where I live. There's a sandy river, and I think it holds the world record for being the shortest river in the world and the most elevation change. And when I first moved here, one of my other passions is fly fishing. I was thinking about getting a drift boat, and I went on a guided trip, and we were using the pontoon rafts. Like they got 2 pontoons. And I asked him if I should get a drift boat or a pontoon boat. And he goes, if you get a drift boat, you will die on this river, because there are so many steep, fast, sharp turns with log jams that will crunch up a drift boat like a aluminum can. Yeah. So start, anytime you're out anywhere, look for patterns, and you'll find them. I am constantly, once again, Sherlock Holmes. I'm constantly trying to unravel these mysteries and find these patterns. My dad said something to me many years ago, and I didn't try it until I was headed back to New Jersey for my mom's funeral. And he said, I don't know if he told it to a class or just to us instructors, but he said, next time you're at the airport, sit in a seat that's got linoleum floor, not carpet, and drop a penny on the ground, and nothing will happen. And then he said, drop a quarter on the ground and watch what happens. And when you do that, when you drop a quarter, everybody within earshot that can hear that sound turns and looks at the sound of the quarter hitting the ground, but not the penny. And it's just things like that, trying to unravel that it's not really a mystery, but things like that just fascinate me. That's why I'm constantly asking that sacred question: what happened here? What is this teaching me? So as I said, everything is connected and interacts with each other. And as I said, we're arguably, even though I don't put a hierarchy on life, my life is no more or less important than the beautiful cedar tree over there, or the plants that are under my feet. A life is a life. these beings, these two beings in these two photos I took last year, and talking about fulfilling our purpose, what's the meaning of life? Bees and butterflies, they pollinate flowers. Do they have to go to school and get a degree to learn how to pollinate flowers? No, they just do it, right? Their instincts tell them that that's what they're supposed to do. A reference my dad uses is if a fawn deer that's not quite yet weaned, if its mother dies for some reason, maybe a car, the forces of creation don't give that baby deer a deer's field guide to wild edible plants. It just instinctually knows what is okay to eat and what is not okay to eat. And those of you who've taken classes at my dad's school, I heard some high numbers there. Know that you can walk up to a plant that you've never seen before and just somehow intrinsically know if it's edible, if it's medicinal, and if so, what those qualities are. So I find it funny that, with all our toys and all our language and all, why are we the only animal out of approximately 10 million species of different things out there are the only one that has to ask that question? When, as somebody with a heightened sense of awareness, I like to think that it's obvious that our job is to, is to caretake. I spend a lot of time doing things like invasive species removal, planting native plants, unblocking game trails, creating habitat for small critters, things like that. But yeah, if we're meant to do anything, I truly believe that we are meant to be caretakers of each other. We're meant to have community, and we're meant to caretake the earth. The problem is that Homo sapiens, all of us here, we are still designed, our brains are still designed to live in groups of 100 or less in a natural setting. And in just like 20,000 years, once, the start of agriculture, all of a sudden, we're stacked up in cities like sardines in a can, millions of people in this small area. And, on paper, it looks like everything should be wonderful, when really our world, humankind is a rudderless boat at the moment. People are at each other's throats. My guy's right, your guy's wrong. When people used to, even if they didn't agree about something, would at least, talk it out and try to understand the other person's point of view. And that just seems to not happen anymore. And, it's an us versus them thing. And as I said, there are entities out there that are profiting from that dissent. And, once again, that bottom line there, those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And that's what boggles my mind. My favorite book is Marcus Aurelius's book, which was his private journal. It was never meant to be published. This book's over 2,000 years old. And he's saying essentially the same thing I am. It's why do we fight each other still? Why should there be borders? Why all of this stuff? But yet we keep just, kicking ourselves in our own asses by repeating these patterns that don't do anything or anybody or any being any good. So being a caretaker is also learning about history, learning about the history of the land you live on, learning about, the beings that you share space with. Where I live right now, within if you were to square mile around me, there is 400 to 600 different species of plants and animals. And I want to meet every single one of them and take a good photo of them. There's just so many things out here. I can go into the woods and find a rotting tree stump and realize that rotting tree stump is its own world. It's its own universe, right? It's got all these different species that use it, whether it's mosses and lichens and insects. And each stump is its own world, and each, going back to animal tracking, a transition zone, those places that have, more biodiversity that tend to attract more wildlife. It's all there. You just have to learn to find the pattern, learn to listen. So how can we change directions? And so here's a funny story. So yesterday I live at the edge of the Mountain Hood National Forest, and there's all these Forest Service roads up here, and you usually go up there and it is just, trash campsite where they just burned everything after trash everywhere. And I drove around up there for 2.5 hours yesterday, and the only thing I found was that blue tarp. The other picture my buddy Jim sent me, I was like, do you have any trash nature photos? Because I don't have any. I don't want to put more than this one in. But, I was bummed out because I couldn't find any trash piles. But part of me is super happy because that was literally the first time in years that I've gone up there and not come away with at least 3 contractor bags worth of trash that people have left behind. And it always boggles my mind how people can go out into nature and then just leave all their crap, throw it in the fire, it's because it's the only way they know how to engage with nature. And that's why I want to, learn to start a wave, So some things we can do, how we can change directions, simply just being kind, understanding, emotionally intelligent, empathetic to all beings, and to all people. Simple things like picking up trash by yourself, or maybe even organizing a cleanup of a river or a park. That it builds on itself, these acts that we do. And I'll tell a story about that here shortly. But when people see you picking up trash, some people will also start picking up trash. It's just like you can go into the woods somewhere where people pass by, and you can put one piece of trash, and you go back a week later and there'll be a whole pile there. It's an experiment we used to do all the time back in the Pine Barrens during classes. And it's like, garbage attracts garbage, because somebody sees a can out inside the road and they're like, well, somebody else did it, so it's okay if I do it. So as I said, to me, my life is no more or less important than any other beings out there. To me, there is no hierarchy to life. We're taught, we have Lord and dominion over everything, and that we sit on this ivory throne atop a column of 8 million plus species of beings. When in fact, those of us that are in the know that it's not a column, but it's a circle. And every being has a place in that circle. And all of those beings are connected by that spider web, by that nature web, as I said. And, to me, I want to create a world where all beings have what they need to thrive, have what they need to live their ideal lives, to fulfill their purpose. And with human beings, guide them to, finding what their purpose is. We have so we also have another thing called inner vision, or instincts, we can call it, our instinct. You need to learn to cultivate that voice as well, and sometimes it'll lead you to make dumb choices like it did me. But, I learned a valuable lesson, and I've spent the last 9 months learning about how to be a business human. When I'm a woods human, I was born in the wrong century. And, my inner vision tricked me into learning skills that I need, so that the only boss I will ever have again is nature and my students. Because I'm, I don't want to be chasing somebody else's dream or vision. I want to collaborate with people, but I don't want to, do it for them. So yeah. So when you learn to cultivate that, the inner vision, it will tell you, when to, maybe I should stay here with my friend who's going through something for an extra 20 minutes and let them vent or let them talk. It will end up, inner vision will end up being your primary tool to leaving every place, space, and person you come into contact with throughout your day better than when you left it. We're never trying to impose our will, though, on what we think a place or something should be like. Remember, we empty our cups, we forget we have a past, and we try to listen to people openly and honestly, and try to guide them to the best of our abilities. So yeah, that inner vision is that little voice inside our heads. It's the angel, it's the devil, and it's our instincts. I a couple of years ago, I had just gotten married to my first ex-wife, and she used to she had a cabin outside of Seattle, and she was a landscaper, and she would have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes I would get up and I would go do a sit down by the creek. One morning I went down there and did my sit, and I was there for about 5 minutes, and just something didn't feel right. I just kept getting this feeling like you need to go. So I got up and I climbed up the hill and I went back to bed for a few hours. I came out, and then I look at the driveway, which was, kind of muddy, and I see my tracks. And then not more than a minute behind me was a mama mountain lion and her nearly adult cub that were stalking me. I made a right into the cabin, and they kept going straight down the driveway. So that, that little voice inside, or if you get the feeling you're being watched, that's because something is watching you or focusing its intent on you. We can cultivate our instincts to be able to, as I said, communicate with plants, know if a plant is safe to eat or not. I can sit down and go into a meditation or walk into it and just know where all of a sudden a direction will pop into my head, and it'll lead me to the perfect branch to build a Bodril kit out of. For those of you who don't know, Bodril kit is a ancient fire making device, or lead me to a water source, or lead me to anything I might need. We just need to learn to listen. See, the problem is we are bombarded by so much distraction these days. Some of it good, most of it bad. And we have the ability and the choice to, choose what distraction we want to let in. But I warn you, the more of that stuff that you listen to, the more of that static, that's going to cut off the signal when people might actually need help, And so one time, it was about 2007, I was in a convenience store in Felton, California. And I'm in there, I forget what I was getting. And this woman comes in with 3 kids. And these kids are little hellions. They were running around all over. And she's just, trying to wrangle them. And she ends up in front of me, at the checkout line. And all of a sudden, I feel my inner vision start to tingle. And I'm, asking it, what am I supposed to do? So she finally gets up to the clerk, and she was 37 cents short. And she looked at her 3 kids and thought about how she's going to have to go out to the car and, go get another dollar, dig through the change. And I just tapped her on the shoulder and I said, "Ma'am, here." And I gave her $1. And as I handed her the $1, I felt this pulse of energy run down my arm into the $1, and I handed it to her. And she just started weeping. And she said, "You know what?" And I always cry when I tell the story. She said, "Every person in my life has treated me like a piece of trash today. And you are the only person, that has done something nice for me. And, I can't thank you enough." And it's those little acts, one little act is a drop in the ocean. But what is the ocean but a multitude of drops? So becoming more aware is a blessing. When we work on our awareness skills, our wide angle vision, going out to our sit spots, wandering without time, destination, or expectation, learning to think a feeling, or not just thinking a feeling, but actually feeling it. You will see the beauty. As I said, crab spiders are my favorite. These are two I got last year. I love the yellow one because of the yellow jacket it's got, arms crossed in front of it. But you will see this stuff everywhere. You'll go into nature and it'll be like you're reborn. But there's a problem. You'll also see this and what we do to our one and only home. Here in Oregon, they clear cut, and then they come in with their planes and they spray the whole area with herbicide, which runs down and gets in some town's water supply, and then a cancer cluster develops. We just think that the earth is, we think that the ocean is the great filter and it'll take care of everything. And that the earth is just going to continue to endlessly supply us with all these materials we need to build cheap plastic goods to keep the wheels of the machine turning. As someone who has, seen some pretty gnarly illegal dumps and things like that in my life, I just, I can't understand how people do it. But, my dad tends to be, a little bit on the, whatchamacallit, let's see, he's a little more fervent about the end of days. I'm forever the optimist. He is too. He'll admit it. But we have to, as a species, become caretakers. Every moment of every day, we need to seek ways to make this world a better place. We need to help those that we can to the best of our abilities. One thing I will tell you is that I encountered something recently that kind of blew me away, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but I started talking to this guy who's since become a member of what I call my brain trust, of a few individuals who are way more skilled in the world of business humaning than I am. And, we initially met because he booked me for a weekend class. So he came out here. And, we did everything, from bow drill to, we processed a rabbit, and just the guy that craves to be in nature, and then he went home and he realized, that the life he had been living up to that point, wasn't, maybe wasn't the ideal thing. And the guy is a saint. His wife is a saint. They're both amazing people. But now, because of this, he's now has developed this anxiety that's caused his heart to run into some issues. And I'm afraid that I broke him when I brought him out here for that class. I don't ever want to harm anything or hurt anything. So, I don't encourage people to learn survival skills and then run naked off into the wilderness, but at least not, forever. Occasionally it's a really good time, but, you have the ability to be whatever you want to be. You just need to decide what to be and go be it. And sometimes it could be a real simple, easy choice and an easy fix. And sometimes it might take something that might take years. Hell, I'm, sitting here not knowing if I'm, going to have a house and a car in the next, 4 or 5 months. I've got some classes booked, and I've got, working on stuff with, about coming out to Wisconsin and doing some classes. But right now, frankly, the last 9 months have been the worst of my life. And because I was tossed into a world I wasn't prepared for, but because of that, I've been able to learn a lot of new skills. Leading by example, that's another important one. And a prime example of this story involves my brother Cody. He just got married this past February. I got to go back to Jersey and see the Pines and the primitive camp. They're actually a standard class started today. But Cody was probably, 4 years old. I'm not sure if River, my other half brother, was born yet, but we were at this Pine Barrens fair at a park, and it's a real windy day. And of course, you've been to those things, and there's trash everywhere. And my little brother Cody's squirming, trying to get away from my stepmom. Finally breaks her hold. And he runs around and he starts picking up trash. And then all of a sudden, another person's picking up trash. And then before you know it, everybody, literally 100+ people, is chasing trash down that's blowing in the winds. And just by that one example of them seeing this little kid picking up trash, caused that wave that I talk about, Also learn, and as I said this before, learn to ask what's needed. Don't think that because you know better, or your awareness is higher than somebody else's, that you are always going to be right, because you're not. You're not. So that's why anytime I work with people around the more spiritual stuff, I step lightly and I ask a lot of questions, because I don't want to impose my will upon that person. I want that person to find and solve their own problems. That's why in class, if I'm running a traditional class, and somebody asks me a question in true coyote teaching fashion, my favorite game is to try to get them to answer their question themselves by asking them a series of questions. So there's some fun in that. But yeah, the more that we become true caretakers, the closer we come to that critical mass. My father says that if you think about fixing things on a grand scale, it seems insurmountable. Whereas, just like he does, I think that all I need to do is lead one more person back to nature, and then just like that, flock of birds that all turns at the same time, or like those, places where there's an island chain and there's monkey populations on each of these islands. And these one group of monkeys started using a tool, and then all of a sudden monkeys on the other island chain started doing it. And it's not like they had the internet and typed up and said, "Hey, check out, I figured out this new way to open a coconut." No, they were plugged in. That's why animals move away from the ocean when a tsunami is about to hit. That's why a steelhead, one of the most magnificent fish there is, can leave a river that's 5 minutes away from here and swim to Japan and come back to the exact same place where it was born. Yeah. So one more person is all it's going to take. And, and it's not going to be an easy job. So that's why I just try to do things to the best of my ability. In closing, I just want to say, it's the little things. And sometimes you can teach people a lesson in a snarky way. When I lived in Florida, I was getting ready to go try to catch a snook, and I was rigging up my rod. I'm pulling my kayak out of the bed of my truck, and this couple pulls up, and the husband grabs all his fishing gear and goes up on the bridge and starts fishing. And then the woman proceeds to open all 4 doors of her truck and just take all of the trash and just throw it on the ground. Now, at first, I had this raging anger where I was about ready to scream. And then I said, you know what? It's not going to do any good if I do that. So what did I do? I waited for her to finished rigging my rod. And then once she was done and set up her beach chair, I went and I picked up every single piece of trash that she took out of her truck. And I took it over to the garbage can, threw it in the garbage can, and then just smiled at her as I walked by. And, I would have paid $100 to think what she was thinking in her head. But yeah, we need to help our fellow humans become aware of how their impact is affecting our planet and all the other beings we share space with and their fellow human beings. Walking the razor's edge. The razor's edge to me is leading a nature-centric or nature-based lifestyle while still using these modern tools that we've created, and finding different and better ways to continue to innovate and create that aren't so destructive to the earth. If we've made all the crazy inventions we've made, I'm sure we can figure out ways to do things a little bit differently. Instead of clear cutting a whole forest of 300-year-old trees that's just over there that were no good for timber and will most likely be shredded and made into paper towels, when they could have done selective logging and made more money. So, you need to you need your lifestyle to reflect what you want to see in other people. If people see me picking up trash, then maybe the next time they see some trash, they'll pick it up. But yeah, walking that razor's edge, and that's the irony of my current situation, is I'm freaking the hell out because I'm rubbing 2 pennies together to try to create a dime, and I could walk into the woods with my axe and my machete and my knife and a good set of clothing and live just fine. But I don't want to do that because I've lived in the woods for 30 days alone, and it's pretty lonely. And I feel I was put on this planet to, take up the vision that was given to my father and put my own spin on it. And people ask me all the time, why'd you leave tracker school in 2009? I would have loved to have had you at my class. And I said, if I had stayed there, I would not be the man I am today. I left because my inner vision told me to do so. And I've spent the last 12 years teaching, thousands of people at many different organizations, coming, finding my own story, becoming responsible for my own face. And then one day when I go back there, I'll be able to add my stories to his, kind of like Bilbo and Frodo. I doubt we'll have the giant book though, and the fancy script. Bottom line is, we need a world of balance. We need a world where it doesn't matter where you're from, what the color of your skin is, who you choose to love, and just realize that we're all one. Now I'm sounding like a Dr. Bronner's bottle, but yeah, we need to be all one, and then we need to start taking care of the earth because, it's Mama Earth is hurting. So learn to listen with more than your ears, and to see with more than your eyes, and to feel with more than your hands. And always ask the sacred question: what happened or is happening here? What is this teaching me? And then there's the caretaker sacred question: how can I improve the world around me? What actions can I take so that this place, space, or person is better than when I arrived? God, my capitalization on that one is insane. But yeah, the moral of the story is, just be a good human. We're all out here working, we're doing the best with the tools we have available to us. And I think if we band together and build communities like we're supposed to, that are all working towards a bright future for all beings, then we will start to just begin to fulfill our role. Every day I see a kid, so entrenched in a tablet that the parent can't get the kid's attention for 5 minutes. It really scares me, when those kids come to power, become the next politicians and whatever. Without those powerful nature experiences that, a lot of us had as children, they're going to have no problem leveling forests and digging mines and doing all that stuff to get the stuff they need, for the cheap disposable products.